Hi there. So I just wanted to give a short talk about how to pay a lot less property tax. So first of all, a bit about me. My name is Keith Griggs. I qualified as a chartered accountant at Deloitte many years ago, and I've had many jobs in that time. One of my favourites actually, I was living in Amsterdam and I was responsible for doing the European consolidated accounts for Canon, and that's me hard at work with my box of floppy disks there back in the day. And that's me on a business trip. We went to Japan, myself and all the financial controllers from all the countries in Europe. Just a bit about my background, and then also I've also been an entrepreneur for many years, and I got into digital marketing and reputation management, and I was 6 times on national TV, as you can see here, mainly Sky Business News and 1 time on the BBC Parliamentary channel. But really, my life, a major turning point in my life was when I bought my first rental property. This was in 1999. This was a 5-bedroom townhouse in Newham. Did really well, and I did a similar thing with my second rental property, which is also a 5-bed end of terrace in Newham. As you can see, I've got a few pictures here, a bit dodgy, but same thing. I've got a almost 100% return if you just look at cash on cash. And that was all not really knowing what I was doing. I was just buying properties from estate agents, and it was really in 2011 when I did Simon Zuch's Mastermind, and then also did Progressive Properties VIP course and many other courses that my property business really took off. And also I've totaled up the amount I spent on property education, and it's over 40,000, but it's been money well spent, because you know the amount of money you can make in property is phenomenal if you know what you're doing. This is another case study. I got into leafleting instead of buying from estate agents. I thought, well, why not go direct to vendor? And this guy wanted to sell his house to me. It was a bit of a mess, so he was very happy to sell it to me at a discount. So in other words, I created equity of £30,000, and I did that in 3 months. So if you analyse that, that's 168% ROI, which is again not bad. We're going to follow other strategies going forward, particularly like commercial residential conversions, buying short lease flats and extending them, because again they're unmortgageable, so you can get them at a discount. And the other thing I'm involved with is doing options. Did my first lease option last year to get some land. Want to get planning permission, which I'm fairly certain I can achieve, which will uplift the value. And then, so just a really minimal amount of outlay, I can potentially make a lot of money just from that one deal. So that's about the property side of things. So I've got 39 years of experience as a chartered accountant, or being a chartered accountant, and I'm also got 22 years experience as a property investor. So the logical choice for me, which has really drawn me in, is to be a property tax specialist, because especially I lived abroad for 5 years. I lived in Australia and Malta, and that also gave a lot of tax saving opportunities. So tax has always been something I've been very interested in and studied, and worked out the best way of minimizing it for my own experience and for my own property business, and now I've started helping other people save their property tax as well. It's an incredibly complex field, and you can potentially save a considerable amount of money if you set things up properly. So because there's so many different taxes. There's income tax, corporation tax, capital gains tax, stamp duty, land tax, and inheritance tax. So it's a way of finding structures that minimize all of those, and there's no one size fits all solution. Everyone is in a different situation, everyone's got different goals. So whenever we take on a new client, first of all, we always do a real deep dive into your exact situation and find your goals. So for example, these are the sort of questions we start asking. Do you have a spouse? Do you have children? What age? Do you have parents? Do you want to pass income in a tax efficient way? how old are you? Are you looking forward to passing on your estate to future generations, to building up like some sort of vast estate, which so many future generations can benefit from that? And how much income is your portfolio generating, and what about any other sources of income yourself or close family have? Are you domiciled in the UK? Because that, if you're not domiciled, that can again present special opportunities of having offshore companies. And are you planning to sell any of your portfolio in the immediate future? So this is an example of a bad setup that actually someone I spoke to the other day. He had this business which has nothing to do with property, where he earned a lot of money. That generated a lot of cash, and then he used that cash to buy properties with in a property investment company. And the way he did that, and him and his spouse owned both companies, and the way he transferred money for the non-property business to the property business, he didn't want to pay himself dividends because then he'd have to pay income tax on dividends. So what he did a long-term loan from the non-property business to the property business, so he could use that money he was earning to fund deposits and refurbs and things like that. That's not a very good way of setting it up, because you're building sort of a time bomb over time. You're just accumulating problems as the loan gets bigger and bigger and bigger. For example, you might have to repay that loan in the future. It might be very large. For example, if you want to sell one of the companies, then the buyer might look bad if it's got this massive loan on the balance sheet, or maybe a lender would object to seeing a large loan on the balance sheet. So there's various reasons why you might have to pay back the loan, and then of course if you pay it back you might not have the cash because it might be all tied up in property, and then you might end up having to do a large dividend which will cost a lot of money that you might not be expecting in tax charges. This is a good solution for many people, so is one of many different possible types of solution. I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but I just thought I'd give you an example of the sort of thing we can set up. So it's a smart holding company with multiple classes of shares. So for example, Class A share, which you would hold, you'd have the voting rights and dividend rights, but no capital gain rights. No, from now onwards, you wouldn't have any participation in any of that gain. You just have to have parts of the gain up until now. And class, maybe if you have a spouse, you can give them, for instance, Class B. The same thing, voting and dividend rights. Then you can have as many other classes as you like for example, children, close relatives, and also people who haven't even been born yet. You can just create all these different classes now, which have, especially if you do it right at the beginning when you've got no assets, these shares have no real value or very low value. So there's no capital gains tax implications if you give them away. And then you could also have a discretionary trust, which has no dividend rights, but all the growth. So all the future growth from this point goes into Class Z, which sits outside your estate. So this is a graphic representation of that. So you've got the smart holding company, then you've got all these different class shares with all these different rights owned by all these different people. But it's basically controlled by you and or your spouse. So you make all the decisions. And then that holding company then can own other companies. So it could own a non-property business, it could own a property investment company, it could own a property development company, for example. And then the property development company could also own SPVs, special purpose vehicles. So if they do new development, just put that in create a new company for that, just to ring fence any liability and keep things clean, you know, if there's joint venture partners or something like that. So, and then when the development's finished and the property's sold off, then you'd wind the SPV up. So, and then you can always, the dividends can always flow up. So the money flows up and it's all sort of held in the smart holding company. And then you can either loan that to people or you can distribute it as dividends, especially to people with in bands of income tax where there's a lower percentage of income tax to pay. So you can basically say, oh, well, I want to give a dividend to the Class D shares, for example, that might be owned by one of your children. And then, of course, money can also flow downwards as loans as needed. So this is a great setup, and the advantages, there's many advantages of having a setup like this with a smart holding alphabet holding company. You can control everything alone with your spouse. You can pay dividends when you like to whoever you like, and all the growth from this is in the discretionary trust outside your estate, so no inheritance tax on it. And this discretionary trust can even exist after your death and lend money to future generations. And by lending the money to, for example, your great grandchild, that's advantageous to giving it in many ways. And one of the ways is, if they ever get litigated against, for example, in a divorce, this, because it's a loan from the trust, that helps reduce the value of their estate and protects them financially. So the best time to set this up is before you buy any property, and then you can give away shares in the holding company, and there's no CGT implications because the shares have no value. The second best time to set it up is now, whatever situation you're at now. And the worst time is to just wait, think, oh, well, I don't really have any assets at the moment, I'll just wait and set this up in a few years' time. The problem with that is it just gets a lot more expensive to move assets around or gift shares when they have a lot more value. So I hope I've given you some ideas. Please go to keithgriggs.com if you want more information. I'd love to work with you. All the best. Bye.